Hello and welcome to this video, and today I am going to be looking at and ranking my favourite PROG epics. Right, so there's a couple of rules that go with this list, and they are a PROG epic has to be 10 minutes or more. I'm sure there's people here that would argue that it should be longer. You know, maybe an epic should just be something that occupies the whole side of a vinyl album, but I decided to go at 10 minutes or more. They all have to be full on progressive rock. If they're not so full on progressive rock, then they get scored down. So for example, some of my favourite tracks by John Coltrane are 20 minutes long. They're epics. Are they prog epics? I don't know. There's tracks by Miles Davis that are 20 minutes long, half an hour long. Are they epics? Well, I would class them as verging on the fringes of prog, but they get marked down for not being full on prog. And also the other rule I've got is I can't have a band twice in the list. So let's kick off. So at number 10, and this I think is one of the greatest side-long tracks ever made. It just gets marked down on my list because of its prog credentials. I don't know whether you class this as prog, I do not know, but I felt I needed to put it in. So at number 10 I have from the Mavishnuksha Between Nothingness and Eternity. On side 2 of this you get the track Dream. I think Dream has a number of different chapters to it, so it's progressive in that sense. There's virtuosity level, it's quite way out. There's no vocals and there's a lot of soloing on it, but I felt I should represent that part of fusion. There's so many fusion tracks, especially from the early 70s, that you could class as being a sort of proggy and definitely epic. So yeah, at number 10, Mavishnuksha Between Nothingness and Eternity. Dream, if you haven't heard it, is quite an incredible achievement. It's performed live. It's predominantly in some really incredible time signatures where it played at very fast velocity. It features a really incredible duet between Billy Cobham on drums and John McLaughlin on guitar. It's a brutal track, you know, and that sound actually was so influential on progressive rock bands around that time. If you listen to Relaya by Yes, if you listen to King Crimson, you can hear the Mavishnuksha influence there. So I apologise to the full-on proggers that might say, well, that's not really an epic, but I had to represent that fusion side in there, and this is really representing all those sidelong tracks by all those jazz and fusion artists. Whether they're prog or not, I don't know. I think this is pretty proggy. So there is at number 10. Right, at number 9, I have, by UK, off the album Danger Money, we have the track Carrying No Cross, which weighs in at 12 minutes 22 seconds. I love the first UK album, as do many people, and it made my top 10 progressive rock albums of all time. But I also really love this album, partly because it features, instead of Bruford, Terry Bozzio, and Terry Bozzio is one of my favourite drummers ever. This has become a touchstone for me. I am a progressive rock drummer, and I've played on various progressive rock albums over the years. There's a couple here. The Rain and Magenta albums are albums I've played on. And this album has often been one I've gone to when I'm like thinking, how can I play? Because the thing with progressive rock is it's a very specific genre in a way. There's tons of freedom there. But when you sit down to play a progressive rock track, you need to ask yourself, well, how do I play progressive rock? And the obvious ways are either to go down like the Mike Portnoy route, or Gavin Harrison route, and Neil Peart route, or the Bill Bruford route, Phil Collins. There's that way. And sometimes I'm looking for another way in, and Bozzio on here so often has shown me now you can play it in a different way and still play prog. And this is a full-on prog album. It's got some very sort of sing-along catchy songs, but on the track Carrying No Cross, it's just an incredible progressive rock. How would I describe this? It's like really good ELP. I'm not a massive ELP fan. I do like ELP. But if you like ELP, check out Carrying No Cross, because it sounds like amazing ELP. I'm sure that's going to get me in hot water, and I'm only on number 9. Sorry, but this is why you watch these videos. You know, whip up a bit of contentious conversation. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah, so fantastic album. If you've got the first UK album and not got this, check it out. It is really different, but it's absolutely wonderful. Amazing sound. Right. So, at number 8, again, I didn't want to put this track in because it's from a band I used to play for. It's from my old band IQ, but it's not a track I played on. I would never put. I'm not that arrogant. I would never put a track I played on into one of these lists. You know, all I can hear when I listen to tracks that I played on is all the bad stuff I did and all the mistakes. So I could never put one on these lists. But as soon as I thought of this list, I thought, well, what are the obvious epics? And I just started to ring them out. This was like the 4th one I thought of, and it's Harvest of Souls off Dark Matter. You know, IQ for me are one of the great neo-prog bands. They're one of the great progressive rock bands, British progressive rock bands of the last 40 years. They have an edge for me over, you know, Marillions and Pendragons and Palaces. I love those bands. They're fantastic, and I know those guys, and they're amazing. But IQ just has a certain sound all of its own. I think it's, for me, it's the lyrical matter. They never went into the sort of sword and sorcery, wizards and Dungeons and Dragons realm, which I think makes them different, and they don't do on this album. This album is a fantastic album. If you don't know it, you've got to check it out. It's one of the great albums. So many of the IQ's albums are absolutely fantastic. But they do a 25-minute, I think, track called Harvest of Souls, and it's just perfectly composed, perfectly in balance. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Everything is absolutely perfectly in place. They're absolute masters of knowing how to deliver it and build up the excitement and keep your interest in going. It's one of those tracks, if you put it on, you know, before you know it, it's over. They just know what they're doing. The subject matter is very mysterious but very compelling. This is the album that they just released when I joined the band, so I had to go and learn this, and of course we were promoting this album, so I had to learn Harvest of Souls, and it was the first time I played in a progressive rock band, so that you know, for me, you know, trying to sit and learn a 25-minute track like that and then be able to pull it off live is such an incredible experience. So yeah, it does have personal, you know, I do have a personal affinity for this, but I think anybody who knows their prog and hasn't heard Harvest of Souls, go and check it out. It's absolutely incredible. So what was that? That was at number 7, wasn't it? So we're now at number 6. And from Hatfield in the North, the Rotters Club. On side 2, we have a track called Mumps. And Mumps weighs in, I think, at... You see, the whole side is 22 minutes long. There's a little track called Underdub, and that almost felt part of Mumps for me when I put that on. But Mumps is probably about 19 minutes long, so it's a bit of an epic. This is probably one of the least famous epics I've put in. So what's Mumps like? Mumps is just the most complex virtuoso epic you've ever heard in your life. They're such an incredible band that are just capable of such mind-blowing virtuosity and composition. Mumps just never seems to end. It's so complex and winding, intricate. Everything's perfectly balanced. You know, it features little vocal interludes and instrumental interludes. It's got some jazz sections, some very proggy sections. There's a wonderful part in it when the track sort of, it's been going for quite a while, say 10 minutes or so, and it slowly fades out and you think you've got to the end, and then it all comes back in and it's even more full on. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. This is the album for me. You know, when I was a kid and I thought I'm going to go and check out some of the Canterbury bands, this is the one I got, and this is the one I love, and this is one I grew up with. You know, the Canterbury bands are so interesting and so different, and there's some incredible stuff there. But for me, this was the album. Very quirky, very funny in places. But actually on Mumps, there's the humour's less there. It is much more of a full-on prog epic. So I think that's number 6. So we're in to number 5. Or are we at number 6? So yeah, we're at number 6, sorry. Those of you who counted, I probably made an error here. But I'm dealing with very, very big tracks, you know, so you might find I've done more than 10. Anyway, this is number 6. Shall we just carry on? From the album You, and I'm putting forward the last track on here, which is called You Never Blow Your Trip Forever, right, which comes in at around about 12 minutes long. But anyone who knows this album will know that that's just the finale of what is basically one long track that seems to meander through the whole track. It never ends, you know. It's one track for me, this album, you know, split over 2 sides. Spoken at length about this album also made my top 10 progressive rock albums of all time, and I've also done a video on it. So what more can I say about it? Well, I'll say something about the track we're specifically talking about, You Never Blow Your Trip Forever. This is the finale of what it has actually been 3 albums, which follows the story, a very bizarre story, which I won't go into here, but it's about a flying teapot and some pothead pixies, right? But if you follow this story all the way through, you eventually arrive at this track, this final track, which is the big epic of all epics. It's the epic of the epic, right? And when you get to that, it's the resolution. You don't think a band could actually live up after 3 albums of the most psychedelic, way out, mind-bending stuff you've ever heard in your life, that they can live up to it. But they do. And at one point, it's as though you can hear all the different albums, right? All the different tracks seem to be spinning in almost like a Charles Ives way. Charles Ives used to try and write music where it sounded like 2 or 3 bands are walking across each other, and they do that on here. And this is very influential on me. I absolutely love that. And on the album Rain, there's a track called right at the end. There's a track called Singularity, which is the sort of the peak of that track. And I did the same thing. We did the same thing where you hear the rest of the album sort of spinning in around you, and it's really taken off this, you know. Also Rush did it a little bit on the Cygnus X1 and Hemispheres thing, but they did it first on here, and that's where I got it from. So yeah, check it out. It's quite mind-blowing. So that's apparently at number 6. So at number 5, Speak of the Devil, here they are, Rush. I really agonised. I thought, what's my favourite epic by Rush? Is it 2112? Is it Hemispheres? Is it Camera Eye? You know, is it Jacob's Ladder? Is it, you know, so many, by Tar and the Snow Dog? Is it Necromancer? I actually love all these. I love every one I just mentioned, you know. In the end, I plumped for Xanadu, and then at the last minute, I thought, no, you know which one you like best, and it's Cygnus X1, Book 1, The Voyage. Rush do something on Cygnus X1 that they just never did anywhere else. You know, it's a full-on prog epic. It's got all the Rush stuff. It's full out. But that bit where they just drop down to the bass, you know, you're in a sort of swirling black hole, and Geddy Lee's bass just kicks in, and it's sort of out of time. Down, down, ga-da-dang, and then you get that big gap. Down, dang, ga-da-dang, dang, and then another gap. And then the band kicks in. That moment for me is absolutely sublime. It's one of the great moments in prog. That Cygnus X1 always was even a little bit more trippier than all the other Rush stuff. They seem to be really going off onto a territory there on this track. So yeah, so at number 5 we have Rush, Cygnus X1. Right, at number 4, and it had to go into the list, and I have searched the house for the album and I can't find a copy of it, so I'm going to have to go and buy it again because I can't find it. But at number 4 we have Supper's Ready by Genesis, you know, and I can't believe I don't own a copy of it. I've searched everywhere for this and I just cannot find it. So really, this, objectively, if I stood back, I'd probably say this is the greatest prog epic of all time. For me personally, Foxtrot was an album I got later on, and I absolutely loved it, but there was Genesis tracks that I loved even more. Foxtrot wasn't one of the albums for me personally, you know, although I do love that track. But there's certain tracks that I've lived with for long, and this ranking at number 4 for Supper's Ready is only my personal history coming in and influencing my decision here with this one. So yeah, what can I say about it? It's just the prog epic. You know, if you wanted to play someone a prog epic, you know, and this is the idea of sort of a storyline, but a very twisted and weird storyline, dripping with English sort of mystery and aesthetics, you know, and that the track starts up and then takes you on a journey, and you go off, and it lifts you emotionally, and you feel at the end of it you've gone somewhere that is really special. Supper's Ready just does that in bucket loads. It's absolutely incredible. The Apocalypse in 9/8 section, so influential. You know, all us people who make prog know that we're going to do that at some point, you know, and you kick into a riff and you just go off and you let that bit riff build and all that sort of stuff. There it is. Genesis really invented it there. So yeah, sorry I can't hold up an album and show it you, but I'm sure you know that album. So yeah, at number 4 we have Supper's Ready off Foxtrot by Genesis. Right, at number 3 I have from the album A Ship Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch by Frank Zappa. I have the tracks Drowning Witch. Now if I zoom in here, not that one, there. So side 2 has Drowning Witch, Envelopes and Teenage Prostitute. All these tracks, all those 3 tracks are actually really, it's hard to distinguish one from the other. The whole side runs through, but for those prog purists that go, no, you've picked 3 tracks and that doesn't count. Drowning Witch is over 10 minutes long and it is an epic in itself. Is this a prog track? Is Zappa prog? My God, yes. This is one of the most proggiest things I've offered today. You know, this is incredible composition. You know, really strange vocals, exactly like Supper's Ready. A really strange story. It's got like incredible solo sections, incredible composed sections. Zappa is a master composer. If I had one criticism of some of the classic prog bands, is they are often finding their way compositionally. They are not composers. They don't, you know, get some manuscript and write out a piece and then present it and that's the composition. You know, some of them do, but on the whole, their epics were made in a rock band way. You know, it's bands jamming in a room. Zappa's not like that. Zappa is in complete control compositionally, and it's like going to music school. If you want to really study composition and arrangement, listen to Frank Zappa. It's like going to music school. He's an utter genius. He's completely in control. He is able to mix, you know, improvisation, electric guitar solos in with like modern classical composition, in with funk grooves, reggae grooves. He understands how to integrate vocals. He understands how to arrange music. You know, his band, which features, you know, percussion like vibraphones and xylophones. You know, the way he integrates that into the sound, you know, of maybe 2 keyboardists, 3 guitarists, a drummer, loads of backing vocals, loads of harmony vocals. He's an absolute master, and if you want to hear him at his peak, you know, it could well be Gregory Peccary. As I'm talking about this, I'm thinking, he got Gregory Peccary, maybe that should have made my list instead of this. Yeah, but Gregory Peccary doesn't go so far out as this in terms of, I mean, Gregory Peccary goes pretty far out, but this has got Zappa's guitar solos in there. It's got like really modern classical. I suppose Gregory Peccary has. Anyway, if you haven't not aware of it in your progger, go and check it out. It's absolutely mind blowing. A lot of comedy there. You know, often prog is very snooty and sophisticated, and it doesn't deal with humour. Although I'd argue that Supper's Ready's got a quirky humour about it. But Zappa is full on humour and very silly humour at that. And that's represented here as well. So, yeah, he's his own world, of course, Frank. Number 3, Drowning Witch by Frank Zappa. Right, at number 2, we have, from King Crimson, we have the track Starless. Starless could well be my favourite prog track. Why isn't this number one then? Because I really felt that we needed a whole side-long epic to be number one. And Supper's Ready's vying for that. This is a little shorter, it's only 12 minutes 18. But for me, it's just perfectly composed, and it just does everything that King Crimson do that I like. If you just listen to Starless and didn't listen to anything else, you get what King Crimson does. You know, it's got that aspects of the weird sort of improvisations, the sort of the dark mellotron melodies, the sort of jazz flights, the very complex stuff. It's got all their signature playing in there. It's got Fripp's signature guitar playing in there. It's compositionally so well done. It's what we call the prog sandwich. You know, so many of these epics are the prog sandwich, but they do it absolutely brilliant. So it starts off very muted, and you have a song, and then it drops down, and you just hear one note from Fripp on guitar, just sort of one note, and then the band slowly creeps in, and they just start to bring in little aspects around this one note, and it builds up and up. That note runs all the way through, but the band's building up and up and up around it until you have this absolutely majestic, dark epic of a track throbbing around that one note. And just when you think you can't get any more intense, bang, and it's off into this sort of flight of jazz, odd time fantasy, you know, and they really just go nuts on this. And then that just seems to lead so brilliantly back to the original song that you had. This is the sandwich. The original song that you had comes back again at the end, but this time it's absolutely majestic. The whole thing's absolute perfection. Yeah. So at number 2, I have Starless by King Crimson off the album Red. So what have we got at number 1? And I am going to be contentious here, I'm sorry, but at number 1 we have The Gates of Delirium by Yes. Right? Could easily have been Close to the Edge. You know, I could swap Close to the Edge out. Gates of Delirium for me though is the very first prog sidelong epic that I have ever heard. And I'm afraid I'm not going for the Relayer version, because this is the one I knew. It's the one off Yes shows. I know. I absolutely love the one off Relayer. So imagine that this is standing in. But I had to do this because Gates of Delirium, I think this is like this could well be the second Yes album I ever bought. The first Yes album was the Yes album, and I absolutely loved it. And then I went and picked up this. And this had some incredible tracks on here. Side 1, Parallels, Time and a Word, Going for the One. I loved all that. Don't Kill the Whale. It had a Ritual on here, nastily split across 2 discs, 2 sides, and then Wondrous Stories. But on side 2, we have the 22 minutes Gates of Delirium. And it just absolutely blew me away. I was like, oh my God, they've got a track that's a whole side long. This is the very first epic that I ever came across. And I just listened to this over and over again. When I bought the Relayer version, it didn't let me down. It was still absolutely incredible. But they're both equal. I think the fact that they were playing it live as well, the fact that they were able to deliver something like this in front of an audience. You know, when I bought the studio version, there wasn't that much difference. It sounded the same. Yes, they're incredible. Gates of Delirium, why does it just edge over Close to the Edge? And why does it edge over all the sidelong epics on Tales from Topographic Oceans? I think they just go that little bit further out. I think Relayer is perhaps their most way out album. I've always thought that they'd heard the Mavish Orchestra when they made that album, and they wanted to up the level even more. And they're just it's such wild and crazy playing. And yet Gates of Delirium delivers for me an as balanced composition as Close to the Edge. Some of the compositions on Tales from Topographic Ocean are a little bit wobblier for me. A little bit more meandering, you know. Although I did check it out the other day and I was impressed, especially the very first side, how nailed that was compositionally from what my memory, you know, was telling me. But Gates of Delirium, that you know, the way it just opens up and it builds and it builds up to such a crescendo, and then at that point it just seems to go into what sounds like a battle. And then that battle comes to an utter crescendo. It's one of the great crescendos in prog, and then it just all falls away, you know, and you're into one of their most beautiful melodies, which is the soon section. Absolutely incredible. This also is vying alongside Awaken going for the one. I think that is also one of their masterpieces. It just didn't quite make it because Gates of Delirium, I really wanted a sort of sidelong epic at number one. I think I had to do that. So yeah, number one, I've got Gates of Delirium by Yes. I think going through these tracks, the thing that makes a prog epic for me, it has to be the composition. You could have a prog epic which is just a song that drones on for 20 minutes, or has got a guitar solo that's like 15 minutes in the middle. You know, there's very easy ways of making a long track, you know. But when prog's at its best, the composition grabs you and then takes you along. And it does that by using compositional techniques which you feel like you know where you are, but you feel interested to carry on the journey to see where you're going. And I think the ability to take you on a journey and to arrive you at a place which is satisfactory is absolutely incredible. It could be argued that Stairway to Heaven does that in a very short amount of time. You know, so that tracks like Stairway to Heaven and Bohemian Rhapsody are also epics because they do that as well, but they do that in a slightly more condensed space. It's difficult to make a track that is compelling over a whole side. And for bands to do this at that time, commercially very risky. You know, if you've made an album with only 3 tracks on it and you're going to go out and tour it, you know, it's a lot to ask the audience to go, here's our latest album, you know, and here's the first track of it and it's 20 minutes long. You know, that's a big ask, but these bands are able to do it because they were in control. You know, bands like Yes and King Crimson and Genesis really understood how to do that. So I think it's that compositional ability and arrangement ability that really puts all of these in that bracket. You know, it's I became very interested in this recently with my own albums. I did an album called Black Corridor. It's on my Bandcamp and it's got a 25-minute piece, and I really sat down and thought I want to make a track that will do that, and I realised that you're really dealing with a thing called through composition. So with a lot of normal rock music, you have an introduction, then a verse and a chorus, and a verse and a chorus, then a middle section, and then you might have the chorus, and that's the standard section. You can't really do that with an epic. This epic has to be broken into sections, but what you don't want to end up is just to have 4 or 5 songs which are glued together. A lot of prog bands make that mistake, so you have to have things that reference back and forth, and you have to be able to lead to those things, and the way you do that is using a technique which I call through composition, which is basically you have a section that naturally leads to another section that naturally leads to another section, and these sections are actually they're not referring back. It's, you know, it's not like verse chorus middle. It's like section A, section B, section C. That's a really difficult thing to do. And the way you do it is by using motifs. I found motifs are very useful, or using elements that you introduce an element and then you keep that element going, and then you bring another element in, and that element keeps going. You know, that's another way of doing it. So compositionally, you have to be really sharp to be able to do that. You can extend songs by using improvisation and solos. A lot of the stuff I've pulled out today doesn't do that much. You know, these are just composed pieces, but even when you do that, that's quite difficult to do. It has to happen at a certain place and a certain time, as though the music's led you to that point where you are relieved to have that happen, and then when you come out of it, you might find you have to sort of gather all your, you know, elements back together then to carry on your journey. So these are the things to listen out for. You know, I'm sure I'm going to do a video at some point about this, but I think that's what, for me, really makes a great prog epic is the compositional skill of the band, and you'd be able to use certain themes throughout that link the whole thing together. Anyway, that has been my top 10 favourite prog epics. I hope you enjoyed it. There's going to be a lot more prog on this channel now as I get deep into it. So again, thanks for listening, and if you want to like it, and if you want to subscribe and all that sort of stuff. And proggers that you're now watching my channel, keep your ears and eyes out, because there will be more prog coming this way. Thank you very much.